What's up? This is Max.
This is Jonah.
This is Dan.
And this is Podcast Paradise, Quarantine Chronicles 7. So I had planned to talk about Wind of Change this whole show, and then the world went to hell for a week.
A lot of shit has happened recently.
So before we touch on Wind of Change, which we should leave a timestamp for the people. If they want to just go to Wind, we can leave that there.
Yeah, we can do that.
Sure.
But first, we have to talk about... Would you guys rather do riots first or Twitter censorship first?
Riots. I think that's like the elephant in the room.
Yeah, let's get this done.
Okay, so do one of you guys want to set it up? I feel like I always set stuff up.
All right, I'll set it up. So in the city of Minneapolis in Minnesota, there was a cop who kneeled on the neck of a unarmed black man in an attempt to arrest him. And
the dude said he couldn't breathe for like 8 minutes.
Yes,
like, it was a long ass process.
The black man, his name is George Floyd. He was pleading for the officer to let his knee off of his neck because he couldn't breathe, and unfortunately, he passed away. And this is an example of what's been really prevalent in this country, unfortunately, which is police brutality against minorities. So, of course, people are rioting now in reaction to not only this, but the whole, I guess, systemic racism of our justice system.
Yeah, I feel like that's an important point that a lot of the naysayers are missing, is that it's not just a reaction to this one thing.
No, without a doubt.
For some reason, some people just cannot understand that.
Like,
Yeah.
the phrase, the straw that broke the camel's back, is pretty fucking obvious that it applies in this situation. Like, otherwise, there'd be a riot every single time someone dies. But before we get into it, I think it's really interesting to, like, sort of note that some deaths go, like, with some protests, but others go with, like, a lot more protests. And I think it just depends on, like, the time that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, right now, it's really tumultuous, and this one just, like, it just hits when it hits different.
Am I crazy, or was there a second one like 6 days ago?
Yeah, it was.
And that's why.
I don't think it.
There was Ahmaud Aubrey too.
Yeah, that was the dude that was
yes.
jogging, right?
Yep, and he got gunned
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
So I think it's like that.
It's
on
only
top
been
of
like
COVID,
5
on top of
days.
that.
It's only been like 5 days, and it's already like out of our minds.
I thought it was more than that.
I don't know. Whatever it is, it happened recently.
Yeah.
So it was two very close together.
It's really sad, like how much they're blurring together at this point. Honestly,
And I think there is something to be said that this is the straw that broke the camel's back, but also I think that the camel's back has been broken for a while.
the camel's back has been broken and improperly fixed hundreds of times.
Because you could look back to, I think, like over 5 years ago now, to the Trayvon Martin and George Zimmerman case. There's a lot of the same sort of reaction going on then too.
And this is pretty much exactly what happened, even down to the military potentially
Yeah.
getting involved
It really
with
is.
the 1992 LA riots.
Yeah,
Pretty much the same thing. So this has been going on for
since the 60s and before that.
since the 1600s.
Yeah.
Before we get into the riots themselves, one thing that I really fucking hate is that there's this picture going around, and it's these. I'm not very well versed in the history of this, but it's these protesters going around. These black protesters. It's like in black and white, and it's them.
Now you're talking about the Panthers one.
Maybe, but it's them marching peacefully, and it's like, this is a protest, not this.
Oh,
and
I'm
then
thinking
it
of a different
shows,
one.
and then it shows the current riots. But then literally, like, you just look in the replies, and it's like, hey, here's a picture from like 5 minutes later, and it's a fucking riot because the cops attacked them.
The riots.
Like, everything starts as a peaceful protest. Riots don't just go from nothing to riots. It starts as a peaceful protest, and it becomes a riot when it's instigated. It's not just spawned out of midair. The fucking wizard doesn't draw it into like conjuration. It comes from something.
And like the opponents of civil rights said the exact same things that they're saying now. It's like, oh, well, this cop has gotten justice, so why are we still complaining about it? And oh, they're going too far. It's like, this has happened before.
Yeah, it's like, oh, no shit, they're going far. Like they've been.
It's a big problem.
So much bad shit. Of course, there's going to be a big reaction. It might not be. Oh, it's not the healthiest reaction for the nation. It's not the
That's
healthiest.
so silly.
It's like-
That is one of the silliest
It's like, okay,
things
are
I've
you
ever
gonna
heard.
are you gonna criticize someone who like has a mental health reaction? They don't have the healthiest fucking reaction ever. No, you're gonna say this is the reaction that they had. It's not the best one, but I understand it.
Okay,
Like,
so I feel like I'm much more measured than I was before, but when I wrote down these notes, I had three main things that I
Mhm.
feel like we need to make very clear about this whole situation. Which to me, because we're young, so we were obviously not around for LA.
yeah,
My first memory of this stuff was really with Trayvon Martin.
same,
Same.
without a
That
doubt.
that absolutely that was where my experience with this started, and in that time being so young, I kind of thought in my brain, this is kind of a tangent, but I kind of thought in my brain like, okay, 2012 and 13, it's police killing minorities, it's gun control, and it's abortion. Like these are the issues of our current time, and 5 years later they'll change.
Yeah, I totally
Obvious-
thought it was gonna. I totally thought it was gonna
Yeah.
end there, and it was gonna be fixed.
Obviously, not realizing that all three gun control was kind of new at that point, but
Yeah.
the other two had been going on for years and years, and I had not realized that.
And like I never knew about. I think it's Black Wall Street. Do you know about that?
No.
It's I don't know the times, but it was this really like well off, really it's an all black neighborhood, like this big street, and it's this really well off street, and there's thriving businesses. It's like their own
It's
proper
in
community.
You're talking in the 1800s. You're talking about
No, I think it was like early 1900s.
Okay, maybe.
But either way, like the US government just comes in and fucking bombs the place with planes. Fucking decimates
Oh
it
my
with
God.
yeah,
fire
you're not.
bombs.
I thought you're talking about the name of the town is escaping me, but it's in North Carolina.
Oh,
Maybe.
I've heard of this before. All right, yeah.
I don't know when it is, but that doesn't fucking matter. The message still stands.
Mhm.
Like this has been an issue for so long, like specifically in like the government just throwing away the civil liberties that they assigned people. Like it's not something new, and it's not something that's going away really soon. And as I've grown up, I realized that really quickly,
Mhm.
and it's really fucked up.
Is it Wilmington? That's the
I
town,
don't know.
right?
Might be.
I remember I learned about it in my race and ethnic relations class.
So
That's all I remember.
here's a funny thing about Wilmington is I always found it kind of poetic that in the same place where it's the same town where this whole like black economy starts,
Hmm.
and it's essentially like the US government tries to destroy it completely. And I always found it very kind of poetic how in that very same town, whatever it was, 100 years later, that's not even 100, like 50, that would be where the most famous person in the world for 10 years was born, a black man named Michael Jordan. I always found that very poetic.
I like that.
But
That's great.
here's here's what I think about. These are three things that I think people are altogether missing about, not just about this case, but in general. These are three, because for some reason this has turned into a divisive issue. Like people are really coming out, and maybe it's just because on the internet people are just kids,
And they love stating their opinion.
but there are a lot of people who are like, oh, this is like bad, and like the rioting is like so uncivilized, and like, so here are three things that I feel like people are missing, and I feel like we should all be able to agree on.
Hmm.
It's dark outside, so I'm gonna try to read this.
Yeah, we're filming this at our old middle school, actually, outside. So it's pretty interesting.
Thank you, Dan. So yeah, the first thing I think we can talk about is the mental image that we have of the friendly neighborhood cop is gone.
Oh,
No matter how you feel about police officers, the guy who's going into the coffee shop for a cup of coffee and a donut and saying hi to everyone is gone. They are fully militarized now.
Yeah.
They
It's
have riot
like-
shields. They have assault rifles. That is
tear gas.
Yeah, it's gone. And they don't try to portray themselves as that anymore. They are like a fully militarized.
And like
operation.
before we get into something, I'm sorry, I keep like doing tangents, but have you seen the video of that woman just getting run over by a horse?
No.
There's like a police battalion riding horses. This one cop just doesn't give a shit. Like he just charges through this it's not like a crowd, but a group of people, and this woman just gets fucking trampled by a horse, like the policeman's horse. They like
How old is this?
It's fucking just happened, like from
Police
this.
battalions are still using horses. That's strange to me.
No, it still happens, but it literally just happened with this, like, whole George Floyd thing, and it just shows like they're not even trying to keep that image alive.
No.
Like they recognize that it's dead. They're not even attempting to resuscitate it. It's just so scummy.
Mm-hmm. And if we saw the same footage that we're seeing from Minneapolis and New York, by the way,
And Atlanta.
if we're seeing the same footage, if instead of saying United States, it said China or Russia, imagine what we would say to that. We'd be like, oh yeah, here we go, the corrupt officers again. Like,
the communists are at it again.
You know what I just said with the woman getting run over by the horse? Tiananmen Square.
Yeah, right.
Like, it's the same thing. I don't think that woman died, thank God, but it's the same thing, essentially. But we frame it so differently because it's not us. And because we're like, oh, we're the U.S., we're so civilized. We're just the same as any other country.
Yeah. All right. Can I get the light again, Dan?
Yeah, sure.
I'll try not to cut in.
You should cut in.
I'm surprisingly furious about this because I have not talked about it yet, really.
The second one is...
How can you read that?
Yeah, dude, that is bad.
There's no accountability at all. There's no... That's because people want to say not all cops, right? That is the line that you hear all the time. And I've said the words not all cops to people who are really aggressive about like
cops.
Yeah, and some people trying to say that they've never... I saw some the other day saying that they've, quote, never felt safe when a cop is around, which that's silly. And it was from a white guy too.
So
silly.
I have cops in my family. And
yeah, right. So it's not all cops. But the problem here is... There's no accountability. There's clearly no accountability within the force.
No.
There is no such thing. Even if you want to take the race thing out of it, there should be a zero tolerance policy or something very close to it for police officers who blatantly abuse their power. Mm-hmm. And in a lot of these videos, the police officers come off as people who...
It's such a power trip.
Who are totally drunk with the power that they have. And they want to abuse it on the people who don't have the means to fight back.
And sort of along that line, I'm paraphrasing a tweet, so sorry I'm not original, but I saw something that essentially said, if you have like 20 bad cops and 1,000 bad cop and 1,000 good cops that know about those bad cops, all you have is bad cops. Because if they're not holding themselves accountable, who the fuck else can? Because like
they're also not doing their job.
Yeah, but when citizens hold cops accountable, this is what happens. Riots. This is how we hold them accountable. And they don't like that. So hold yourself accountable, fuckwad, or else we're gonna do it ourselves.
The whole point of cops is to protect and serve. And when you are not protecting the public against your peers, you're not doing your job.
You're protecting yourself and you're serving yourself and no one fucking else. Like, that's not what the job of a police officer is.
And I've heard cops who have said like, oh, like it is a really hard job. Like you guys, like it's way harder to make these decisions in real time. It's like, well, that is, you don't have to have this job.
Yeah.
That's if
you're not ready for it, then get the fuck out of the kitchen.
Like, yeah, of course you don't have the same level of response. Of course you have a heightened responsibility from an average citizen because you're not an average citizen.
You're not drafted into the police academy.
Yeah, you voluntarily took this position.
You went to the academy voluntarily.
And there should be, absolutely. I don't know how anybody could argue that there should be a much stricter policy within the force and in our own court system as well against officers who abuse their power, whether it's against black, white, or otherwise. Yeah. It should be just, you can't do that. I don't know if it's real.
It's so funny that it's not a thing already. It's like ridiculous to think about.
I totally forgot to check if this is real, but there's a video that I saw lumped in with a bunch of cop things where a cop is just chilling on the street. And I laughed at this video. It was so ridiculous. The man literally gets down on one knee so he can aim lower to the ground better and just fucking blast a fucking squirrel. It's like real. Like, what was the point of that, man? Like, you didn't even. Come on, like, well, it's a guy. Like, what?
Eat a donut if you're gonna be bored.
Even if that's not true, I have an experience of that myself, and so does Daniel. At our job, there was a raccoon infestation. And we work at a place that is near a lot of houses. A cop we have cops that are always there. A cop just fucking came and shot a raccoon out of the tree. In a residential neighborhood in a very rural area surrounded by houses, shooting a gun just into a tree.
Well, you know what they say, raccoons are the bandits of the animal world. So he could have just been misunderstood.
I think he was just fearing for his life from those little tiny grubby paws.
Seriously though, he was just being an asshole who was bored out of his mind and wanted to shoot something.
Yeah, and like, okay, if you're bored and you're like working at Taco Bell, you can make yourself a taco. If you're bored as a cop, don't fuck off. Like, and like how you were saying, like, this is a really hard job. It should be. It shouldn't be an easy job. You're enforcing laws that you probably forgot about because you're so high off your own farts. Like, it shouldn't be an easy job. It's hard in its nature to perform such a feat. So you complaining about how hard it is, you don't even understand what the fuck you're doing.
Yeah. So
I don't get it.
This brings me to my third point. Because again, a lot of the things you'll hear from people are, how can you judge when somebody, because you don't have to fear your own life. You just have to fear for your safety. People will say, how can you judge if you fear for your safety when you have the luxury of sitting with a video and watching it from your couch, and you can pause and rewind and really think, and there's no stakes, and it's way harder in the moment. Brings me to point 3. Why is it that the police force and also firefighters, but for the sake of this, we're talking about police. Why is it that police officers seems to be the go-to pathway for people fresh out of the military who have PTSD? And we're throwing them in these situations. It's like, yeah, of course they can't fucking make that decision. Like, what? Not only is it a completely different level of training.
You're not dealing with enemies of the state. You're dealing with people. Between
military and police. Also, like, it's so much more likely if you have had any sort of combat in a military setting, and you come in and you're going to think everything, you're going to fear for your life.
That's how you have PTSD.
Yeah,
you're trigger
that's
happy.
Your fucking background.
There is a certain level of force in combat that you use against the enemy and a civilian. Mm-hmm. You do not
totally different, very far off.
You do not pistol whip a civilian. You do not choke out a civilian with your knee.
And also,
let's
going back to that, you said, like, yes, okay, it's a very, like, in-the-moment decision. You know what? If I want to be stupid, I'll give him that. This dude was on his neck for 8 minutes. Right, that excuse does not even come close to this argument. Keep that the fuck away.
He was literally listening to the man saying, I'm choking, I can't breathe.
He literally had his hands in his pockets while he was on his neck. He was nonchalantly murdering a man in broad daylight.
Yeah, there are unquestionably, from watching, especially like any footage of the riots, you can see that some of these cops are there's no way to beat around the bush here. Some of them are just sick fucks.
They're just assholes.
Some of them are
like the dude with the horse. I saw a cop just push a woman on the ground and she fucking face planted on cement. Like, they are assholes. Yes, not all cops. Yes, there are plenty of good cops, but the assholes are assholes and they need to be put in check.
Right. There needs to be some form of accountability within the force. And then it's just the thing that bothers me a lot is, how can you not understand, just even as fucked up as it is and how blatant of a breach of the First and Third Amendment it is, how can you like not understand optically how it looks when you arrest a CNN reporter there?
That was insane.
How can you not be like, maybe we shouldn't do that?
And like,
he's holding a camera. He's clearly a threat.
And I saw an interview with him afterwards, and he said the only reason that I wasn't so afraid for my life was because I knew I was on live TV and they couldn't do anything.
Right.
Like, he like, in his mind, the only reason that they aren't just gonna fuck him up is because it's bad optics. And like, it's sad because it's true. They probably would have fucked this dude up if he wasn't on live TV.
Yeah, they would have locked him up for a long time.
They would have hurt him physically, and definitely.
Like, but like, like you said, like, what reason is there? Like, I can't imagine what he was doing. Like, they could just tell him, hey, can you move? You're in the line of danger, like, yada yada yada. There's another report of like another reporter, like a woman reporter almost getting arrested, and like they moved her out of the way. And like, I don't understand why they don't just communicate this better instead of just going like from 0 to 60 and just fucking going ham and arresting.
Because they're completely unchecked. And this is
They're just so in their own world.
This is another key point too, where it's impossible to ignore this point of it. One of the reasons that this has gotten worse and not better since 2012 is because it's Trump instead of Obama in office. Unquestionably.
Yeah. He called them thugs, and he said that he would use ominous weapons.
And there are I don't know how many times I've seen the image. It's not hard to come across where it's the difference between how he tweeted about the black protesters versus the Charlottesville white supremacists
who had guns in the state house.
The white supremacist was, there are good people here and you shouldn't be demonizing them. And then the protesters in Minnesota, it's like, these thugs, they start looting, we start shooting.
He literally said, give these people a chance to the white protesters, and then he called the black people thugs. Mm-hmm. Like, give me a reason that's not racism.
Right. I was just going to say that. I'd love to hear. I'd love for if somebody comes across this who is a Trump supporter, I would love to hear your defense of this. Please, try to explain it to me.
You know what? I don't even want to respond. I just want to hear it and not have a chance to interject so they can just walk themselves in circles until they fucking fall down confused. Because there is no way you can, unless you just want to blind yourself to the truth and just come up with lies, there's no way you can give me a reason that is not, at least influenced by racism. I see nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just not possible.
I just don't like how Trump has to stoke the flames all the time and just incite, just make it so that our country is as polarized as possible constantly. Because that's not beneficial. If, as a world leader, you don't want your people to be at odds with each other, because then they won't unite to a common cause.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. That is the biggest above all. Trump's legacy will boil down to he is the only president out of all the 45 who has tried over and over again to divide rather than unite.
Which should be the sole job of the president, is to unite.
He turned the coronavirus into a partisan thing.
Yes.
He turned fucking civil rights back into a partisan thing somehow.
And
this man doesn't even want to leave. I feel like at this point he's like, you know what? Maybe I won't get reelected, so I'm just going to fuck over the country for Biden. I don't understand what his line of reasoning is for this.
I'm seeing a good segue into our next topic.
Sure.
Another source of division is mail-in voting, saying that there is a clear benefit for the opposite party in mail-in voting because they can cheat the election, despite having no evidence.
Yeah, entirely false. I think that the only reason that he doesn't want mail-in voting is because Democrats are actually afraid of the coronavirus, so they won't go out and vote. Republicans, at least the bad ones, are fucking dumbasses, are not afraid of the coronavirus and will go out and do whatever the fuck they want. And there's so many voting places for the primaries that were just so clogged up because of coronavirus fears and how they had to handle it, that a lot of people did not get a chance to vote in these places. Mm-hmm. So why not do mail-in voting?
It doesn't make sense.
We know it's not that easy to corrupt as a system.
There also is a real X's and O's answer, where one of the reasons clearly that Trump beat Hillary in 2016 is because the voter turnout for his base is strong.
Yeah.
That's a clear advantage that he has if you want to get into the nitty-gritty.
Here's the thing with Trump supporters is that, all right, so if you're a Biden/Hillary supporter, you're generally an average Joe who's just I dislike Trump. I mean, I'll go out and vote, I guess. If you're a Trump supporter, you're like, hell yeah, Trump all the way, Trump 2020, everyone needs to know it. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go out and get my family to vote.
But one thing I don't understand is why not vote? Okay, it's time out of your day, but you're practicing your civil liberties. Why not vote? And unless it's pure laziness, I don't understand a reason to not vote.
I think there are a lot of people in 2016 who looked at it I don't like either candidate, so I don't want to vote, which I think is kind of a dumb way. And a lot of people throwing votes to Gary Johnson, if you remember.
Yeah.
It's going to happen again this year with Gary.
It was a weird... It's a weird way to think that I don't agree with at all. It's like saying like if there's two options and even if they're both not great, one is clearly better than the other.
Yeah, it's the lesser of two evils.
And you're just not I feel like that's kind of counterintuitive.
Like my bubby went out and voted for Abraham Lincoln in 2016. She wrote in Abraham Lincoln, and she thought that she was so fucking smart. She was like, I don't like Hillary. I don't like Trump. I'm going to vote for Lincoln. And right after the election, she was like, what the fuck did I do?
Yeah, it's like, good job. You essentially voted for Trump.
Yeah, you threw your vote away.
If you throw your vote away, the victor is who you voted for.
Yeah, exactly. Because I completely agree with you, Dan.
I think the Trump base was bigger than the Hillary base significantly. It's just there were a lot of average people who swung Hillary who didn't like either.
But not enough.
But there were enough. He did lose the popular vote.
Yeah.
By 2 million. Around 2 million.
The popular
but
vote.
not enough to actually do something real.
So
enough to make numbers look pretty.
So what I was segueing into was, so Trump made a tweet about voter fraud. Twitter launched back and said, well,
I think the virus was what they responded to. He tweeted about the virus.
There was also mail-in voting.
They did it twice recently.
The mail-in didn't go through, though. There was an email today where they said that
they retracted it?
I think it was the email one, but there was one that Twitter retracted.
Oh.
But they did not retract the virus.
The one that I saw was he posted about mail-in voting being a fraud, and then they said, here, get the facts on mail-in voting not being a fraud. And they cited a couple articles.
And they tagged his tweet as possible, false news. But you could still easily see his tweet. It was right below you didn't even have to click on something different to find his tweet. It was still there right as rain.
So a lot of people are saying, great, Trump can now be accountable for, I guess, the sort of false and exaggerated news that he tends to spread on his social media. I actually kind of disagreed with what Twitter did. Because, so you've probably heard this being floated around of like Twitter wants to be the arbiter of truth, where they want to say, this is definitively what is correct and what you're saying is definitively incorrect. But then they'll cite articles by the Washington Post or, I don't know, CNN or something. And it's like, well, I don't think that's the right way to go about it either, you know?
But
what else are they going to do?
I didn't see the voter fraud one, so I can't speak on that. But with the COVID one, there's been a concentrated effort within Twitter to dissuade people from talking about fake things that having to do with Corona. They see it as a public health thing,
which is fair.
It can really hurt people,
and so they did call his tweet fake news. That I see no issue with. And I think Twitter, it's been a long time coming where they have had to do stuff like this.
Yeah.
And I think I disagree with you, Dan, because I think it sets a standard that the other social medias have to abide by. And again, it's not as though Twitter is banning his tweet or even like blocking it from view. They're just having a tag over it that says, this is probably fake. Here are some sources we found.
I don't want to say I totally agree with you on the sources thing. I like that they're giving sources. I do wish that they gave a very wide variety of sources. They should do that and maybe start off with like 2.
But
okay, Dan, it has to start somewhere. Like the system isn't going to be perfect, but this dude is just blatantly lying to the public, and he is the president of the United States. And people who I saw an interview of someone who was out during Corona without a face mask, and the interviewer said, why? And they said, if he doesn't have to wear one, then why do I? He said, who? He said, Trump. Like people take this man's word as gospel. If you don't check it, and like, how else is this going to happen? And you might say, oh, someone can like say something in the replies. Someone can quote tweet it and say this is false. They're not going to look at that. They see his tweet. They're not going to look down under the fold. They're not going to look at the replies. They need something right then and there in front of their stupid fucking mugs to tell them, hey, big surprise, but people on the internet can lie.
To me, I think it's more so that they did it too late, because there's a chance that this might not actually dissuade his base at all.
Oh, his base will never get dissuaded.
Oh, no, yeah. I don't think...
This is for average Joes.
I don't think no matter I guess if they did it very, very early on, it could have dissuaded his base. But I
Totally.
think even as of like pretty early on into his political career, I don't think you could dissuade people with these sort of warnings.
I think
Past 2016 was too late.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
15 and 16, they absolutely could have done it. And it was a problem with Twitter where I actually did not realize because of his banning tendencies, because Twitter will suspend you for calling someone an idiot for saying global warming is fake. That has happened to me. So they kind of have a rap as like conservative apologists,
Mhm.
but I did not realize that the guy who runs Twitter is not conservative. Actually, he just is very, very afraid of conservative backlash.
It's so funny
I don't blame him, honestly.
watching Zuckerberg, who, by the way, is kind of an evil villain, I guess. But
We've covered Zuck a lot.
yeah. But watching him talk shit about the Twitter CEOs, like, well, we're not going to do that on our platform. It's like, dude, come
Okay,
on.
but you should.
Your platform is the literal gutter of the internet.
I know.
Yeah.
It
I was
really
literally
is.
talking about how I was about to delete Twitter because of so much shit on it, and then I said all I'll have left is Instagram and Facebook, and I fucking hate Instagram and Facebook. Like, no one goes to Facebook for something good unless they're an old bitch or like run a shitty meme account.
Imagine running a Facebook meme account.
But yeah, I feel like this is something that, like, I was very glad that they have done this, because at least now there's a very clear, like, which is really what we need more of.
Mhm.
Whether it's social media or cable news or whatever, we need a lot more of like don't try to make this into like everyone's point of view is valid.
Yeah, no, we need a clear hardball. This is bullshit.
And this is not a thing about like censorship. This is not taking down his tweets. This is not
when
trying.
people call this censorship, it pisses me off.
This is not-
nothing close to censorship.
This is not trying to make. This is not trying to make Twitter the arbiter of truth. This is just trying to say, hey, this is pretty blatantly false.
Mhm.
And it's also a problem that exists in cable news in general, where they're just very afraid to give any sort of analysis whatsoever. They'll
Yeah.
say, let's hear from this guy who supports one thing, and let's hear from the other guy who supports the opposite. We have no sense of like, hey, well, the one guy, they're actually 96% of people agree with him, and 4 with this other guy. On the show, it's just portrayed as 1v1, 50-50, two sides to the same coin. And there's never any like mediator who's like, well, maybe you shouldn't call it that. That's not really true. That's kind of dumb. It never happens.
Mhm.
So this step for me, I disagree with you, Dan. I look at this as it's not going to solve the world, not even close, but it's a step in the right direction, and it's something that should have happened a long time ago.
So I think what they did was, it was definitely the right thing to do because he was spreading misinformation. But I can see possibly it getting out of control. Because first of all, why just Trump?
It's not just Trump.
They're fact checking other people too.
They've been doing this. It's a very clear point of emphasis with COVID.
So they've been doing it to all sorts of politicians.
To people in general.
People in general. All right. My second point is if they're just going to be citing certain sources that, the Washington Post has bias, all right? And maybe they have factual reporting, but they're biased. CNN, same thing. And I can definitely see people being like, well, why not have, God forbid, Fox News or something on here too? And like, why not have why have only certain outlets that fit a certain agenda be used to combat what Trump is saying?
Well, I think.
Yeah, but what happens when they start fact checking Fox News' tweets?
Yeah, and I think it's. I think it's less. I think it just so happens that these people are saying what's true. I don't think it's so much as we're gonna cite a bunch of like Democratic news sources. I think they're just saying we're gonna cite who's right, at least for this. And the thing is, like I said, Dan, this is really early on, and yes, it could go out of hand. So could fucking anything.
Mhm.
Like anything on the internet could go out of hand if it's not checked. But that's why we need someone to try it. And like you said, Max, I really wish they did it earlier. but like in a sense, I'm almost a little happier that they sat on it, and I don't know if they took this time to build a system or anything, but like I think it's.
According to people within Twitter, this has come out of left field.
Oh,
them.
really?
They're like, I don't know why we've been debating this for years. I don't know why it was all of a sudden done today.
Oh, okay. Then that gets rid of my point. But I was gonna say I just I really want to give this idea a chance before we throw it out because I really like it. And yes, it could go wrong, but it's something that we need to develop to a point where it's like relatively foolproof.
Yeah,
and then I think it'll be gospel.
When people say, because people will always use that with censorship, is like, where's the line? And to
Let's
me,
find it.
I would almost say that this is like the line of like, this is gonna be a weird analogy, but like mail, like snail mail. It's almost like, yeah, okay, turns out we can send people anthrax through the mail. Like that's not good. We should probably check these envelopes better next time. You know what I mean? Like it's not like just because we have mail, we have to allow people to send anthrax through the envelopes. You know what I mean? Like there's always some sort of like we can always have rules and regulations. We can always fine tweak things. Just because we instill something doesn't mean we have to like go all the way with it and make it totally unrestricted.
Yeah, by doing this, we're not saying, all right, so Twitter's totalitarian now. Sorry, guys. No, we're saying we're gonna ramp up on some things, and if we're you know what, we might step out of line sometime, and that's when the backlash is gonna hit because the market's gonna decide that.
It's also not as if Twitter is the United States government.
Yeah,
and I understand that Twitter is the news source for a lot of people, but the beauty of social media is that if like people really start hating, and people kind of do hate Twitter, but let's say that it becomes, oh my God, I literally can't post anything on Twitter without them getting all over my backs, and Facebook always sucks. Yo, someone can make a new social media site.
Dude,
like it's not as if we can't do this.
Make a subreddit. Go on 4chan. Like, okay, you'll have to learn a little bit about the internet. Ooh wee. But like, there's plenty of places you don't gotta reside in Twitter.
I've literally said this before online where someone was like, oh, well, now that Twitter is censoring our conservative voices, now we have nowhere to air our views, and this is censorship. And I was like, well, no one's stopping you from making a new platform, you know?
No.
You could make Trump Twitter, you know, Twitter 2 with a MAGA hat on it.
Dude,
you know?
Start a podcast. If fucking this dumbass can do it, anyone can. Even if you're like a brain-dead Trumpite, you can still do it.
Yeah, I understand. I've heard people who have made the argument that in a lot of ways social media is kind of our, I don't know, kind of like the analogy of like the town square in ancient Greece, where like this is where you're supposed to go to debate politics. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, and using that analogy, if one building in the square censors you, you can go to another one. It's not that big a deal if the building turns out to be really shitty after a while.
And also, what gives you the right to lie in the town square? Like, just because it's a place for just because it's an open forum doesn't mean people aren't going to check you if you're being a dipshit. Yeah. And say there's an arbiter of the town square or a moderator. They're going to tell you to, like, straighten the fuck up if you're acting like a dipshit. Like, there shouldn't ever really be a place where it's total anarchic freedom. Like, that's why we have rules and regulations in our government and in our platforms and in everything.
Right.
So I guess to sort of wrap this up is, you know, I'm always hesitant when things like big changes in politics happen. I'm always a bit skeptical, but, you know, I definitely see how this is a plus for Twitter and for, you know, fighting misinformation in general. So just because I didn't think it was the greatest idea doesn't mean it won't turn out to be, you know, the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is just the first step in fighting misinformation. Like, I don't see much else what you can do aside from putting actual warnings.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys ready to take an ad break and then we can go to wins?
Yeah.
Are you bored of the same old tired porn? Have you seen the Riley Reid real estate video one time too many? Well, good news. Introducing Fuck.com. Fuck offers hundreds of categories, including POV, JOI, and even more obscure things such as fucking machine and fat Asian. And use promo code MIXLIX, that's MIXLIX, for 15% off of your next purchase of Fuck Premium. But hurry, the offer is first come, first serve. Only the first person to apply will get the discount. Wait a minute. It seems like the code has been redeemed by Daniel Farnworth. Well, in any case, fuck.com serves all your porn needs one fuck at a time. Again, that's fuck.com, fuq.com. Now back to the podcast.
All right, guys. So let's get into the what I would call was the original intent of this week's episode, is to discuss the Spotify series Wind of Change.
Yes, it's going to be a long one.
So if you're not familiar with what Wind of Change is, first of all, I would recommend, if you have not heard it, I would recommend listening to it before you listen to us.
Definitely. It's really in depth, and I've never really listened to a podcast like this before, but it felt like something really cool and new. Max, thank you for making us listen to this.
Yes, thank you. But get ready. If you want to get your information about this podcast from us, be prepared because it'll be the shittiest teal deer ever.
Teal deer?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
It's TLDR. Too long didn't read.
Okay.
So yeah, I definitely recommend, like what Max said, listening to it.
Yeah. So, so for the people who are really stubborn out there and are ignoring our advice, I'll sum it up for you really quick. Basically, it's an 8-episode narrative script podcast it's nonfiction, and it's about a journalist who heard a rumor in 2011 that the CIA wrote the song Wind of Change by
I heard the rumor from a CIA agent.
Yes,
An
through a
ex-
friend of a
yeah.
friend.
Mm-hmm.
And the podcast is basically his quest of interviews, trying to dig up information before he kind of ends it getting to interview the lead singer of the Scorpions one-on-one.
Klaus Meine.
Now, you might be wondering why the CIA would want to get involved in a rock band like the Scorpions. Well, they were also... This was also the Cold War.
Well.
This was the Cold War, and this was the big battle between democracy and dictatorships in the East.
Yeah, and they go over in the podcast how during this period they used other forms of media to influence. And all the...
Other musicians,
whenever
too.
they talk to people who were connected to the CIA, were ex-CIA, they always said, like, no, yeah, I would believe this.
Yeah.
This is a believable rumor.
That's what really got me, is that no one confirmed it in the CIA, but they're all like, yeah, that makes sense. I never thought of that, but if that's an operation, that's pretty cool.
And
We totally could have done that.
And they also go over how the CIA is very compartmentalized.
Mhm.
So only the people who have to know certain pieces of information know them. And I would imagine there are very, very, very few people who know everything that the CIA has done.
And not only that, they also noted that like for certain things, even if it's an old thing, if they're still ongoing with that similar practice, they won't disclose it. They won't disclose the old thing because they don't want to even like let on the idea that this happened before, it might happen again. So that very much it could still be happening right now, and that's why they refuse to talk about it, which I really like.
They cannot confirm nor deny.
Yeah.
So, my notebook's backwards. So first, I have a couple notes, a couple talking points I want to hit.
Mhm.
First of all, this is about as high production value as you can get on a podcast.
Dude, it felt like when I finished listening to it, I was like, that is art. Like that felt really cool just to like listen to.
Mhm.
It made me feel like a badass.
Should it even count as a podcast?
Yeah, it
It
does.
should be more of a documentary, right?
No, there are a lot of podcasts like this. It's just because like our idea of a podcast is what we do, where we just sit around in a circle and talk about things. I have started taking notes, but it's very much a free flowing conversation
Mhm.
that sometimes touches on mature subjects. But there are a lot of podcasts out there that have, a script, ambient noise. They're very much a narrative form, and this is one of them.
I've never experienced that before this, and it's totally changed my conception of podcasts, and
Yeah.
I'm really happy that I listened to it
Mhm.
because when I think of a podcast, I think of like 2 or 3 dudes and like 1,000 episodes, and it's all related to current events.
I think
Mhm.
about Joe Rogan.
Yeah, pretty much.
But like this is just turning what I thought like I knew about podcasts on its head in such a cool way, and I really enjoyed listening to it because of that.
Mhm. So the second thing, I feel like I just have to say this right off the bat. Just get it out of the way.
Mhm.
My absolute biggest complaint about the podcast, and I feel like I almost tweeted at the journalist. What is his name? Patrick.
Yeah, it's Patrick.
Patrick something. He has like
Kavanaugh or something.
no, he has like 3 names.
Whatever.
But anyway, I came very close to tweeting at him because he continuously calls the Scorpions a heavy metal band.
Yeah.
False.
Yeah.
False.
So
False.
here's our resident heavy metal fan.
Yeah, false. Blatantly false. I just felt like I need to clear that up really quick.
Well,
I don't blame him because he's like, yeah, I'm not this. He does say in the podcast, this isn't his genre, his area of expertise, but it was just for me personally, it was something where every time he said it, I would cringe a little bit.
Though I'd like to defend him in this a little bit because I noticed whenever they were talking about bands, they were talking about them in like their old classification. Like they talked about this one music producer that they had on. He talked about the Doobie Brothers, who I'm very familiar with, and he said that they were hard rock. And nowadays, the Doobie Brothers are the furthest fucking thing you can get from hard rock. It's what you think about when you think about like your dad on a boat. Like the Doobie Brothers are just like China Grove. Like it's just such like a nice song. It's like upbeat, but it's not like hard. But back then, that was hard to them.
Yeah.
So I think back then the Scorpions were heavy metal.
They were not.
They were never heavy metal.
but I'm saying for other so then
Like
I'm shifting that
rock.
point then.
They often get called.
There
heavy
was no classic rock back then, Dan.
They often get called heavy metal. But
nowadays still.
That is why I defend him, because other people he talks to in the interviews say they are a metal band, but that is false.
That's weird. They're like barely hard rock.
It's false. It's blatantly false.
Yeah.
So I just had to clear that up. And Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, Skid Row, also not metal.
They called them metal too.
Yeah, also not metal. Third point. Have you guys had any experience with Wind of Change before this? Because I had not.
No, I've never heard the song.
Same. Because I also didn't grow up listening to radio at all. So there are a lot of songs that I did not hear until when I was like 15 that people would be like, oh my God, like what? I was 11 when I first heard Crazy Train.
Were you 15 when you heard Bohemian Rhapsody?
Yes, I was 15 when I first heard Bohemian Rhapsody.
The only Scorpion song that I was familiar with before this podcast was The Hurricane.
Yeah,
Rock
that's
You
the
Like a
only one I
Hurricane.
know.
Same.
Yeah.
But like, this is the type of music that I grew up listening to as a kid. But I've never heard this song before. Really good song. I really like it. But
For some reason, a immensely successful song, just not in the United States.
gee, I wonder why.
In Europe, it was really popular.
Yeah.
And it is. I was like, oh my God, when they said that in Europe, it's higher on the all-time selling songs than Bohemian Rhapsody.
Did they say it was like number 5 or something?
No, it wasn't 5. I think it was in the teens.
Oh,
but it was very high.
But like,
and I've never heard it.
When they talked to that like one like younger Russian reporter, I don't remember her name,
Mm-hmm.
but
yeah,
then
episode 7.
yeah, he brings up like the Scorpions, and she's like, "Oh my God, I love them! Like they're like, oh no, she said they're like one of my top 5 bands like of all time, like maybe number 3." And I was just like, this is like a younger woman, and she's saying that like this band is that I've heard, to me, is a one-hit wonder essentially, is like her number 1 band essentially. It's really, really, really popular there and fucking nothing here essentially.
Well, they definitely had their hits in America besides Rock You Like
But
a
they
Hurricane,
don't really stay. I'm saying like the lasting power. Like they are still prevalent there, not really here.
Yeah,
It's
totally.
kind of like the Queen. Like Queen here is still kind of like relevant, especially because of the
Queen
Queen
everywhere.
movie.
Queen is relevant. Queen was relevant before the movie.
Yeah.
Queen has been relevant.
I said
everywhere.
especially the movie kind of flared them up even more so.
It is true that with younger people, it did kind of like it definitely bred a new generation of Queen.
a
fans.
really shitty generation of Queen fans, might I say.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask you guys because again, I had never heard.
No,
that song
totally
before.
unfamiliar.
So another thing about the music is I found. So I think it was episode 5 5 when they talk about the other bands in the festival
Mhm.
where the Scorpions played.
So
in the
Bon
show.
Jovi was there.
Yeah, Bon
Motley
Jovi.
Crue.
That was one of the like weirdest parts of the show for me because they took like you can clearly see, and one of the people that they interview even says it. They're like, yeah, literally all the bands there besides the Scorpions made a complete fucking mockery of it.
Yeah.
And had no sense of what it meant.
That's like really sad. And like I'd love to point out that it was an anti-drug and alcohol concert that they were doing.
Yeah.
Bon Jovi fucked off of his ass, like
With-
barges into the bathroom with the reporter.
No, that's
in it.
Ozzy, dude.
That was Ozzy.
You're doing
yeah.
an anti-drug concert with Ozzy.
Yeah.
I think the name of the concert was something like Coalition Against Drugs,
Yeah.
and they all called it like drinking with drugs or something. Like they
Yeah,
made like
they made a name.
They
they
made
like
total light out of
bastardized
the
the
whole
name
situation.
to like laugh at it. So it's like, yeah, we're gonna have these people high off their asses constantly telling you not to do drugs.
It's almost like that wasn't the purpose of the concert at all.
It was so funny though. I was like, oh man, and that person is totally right. The journalist from that time period that they
Mhm.
interviewed, who was like, why, like, it just does not add up and has never added up to me why they sent these bands.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, and that was one of the funniest things to me, because if I were to send anybody on any sort of delegation mission, the last person I'd probably send is Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah.
Because he's not even going to be coherent.
No.
He's also going to be goofing around the
They-
entire time.
They played interviews of like a bunch of the rockers there, and it was the funniest shit because it was like really serious, and it's like, oh my god, how do you feel to be part of this delegation? Oh, I feel fucking sick, man. Like they made such a joke out
Watch
of
me
it.
eat this bat.
Yeah, no, and I will say though, I liked when they finally, because there was one. This isn't going to mean anything to you guys because you're not really into this genre.
Mhm.
But it was always like they were like, oh, let's interview, the singer of fucking Skid Row, and it's like, yeah, okay, don't really care that much, and let's interview blah 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 who was working with Bon Jovi and blah blah. And then they're like, oh, and I talked to Ozzy Osbourne guitar player Zach Wilde, and I'm like, oh my god, Zach Wilde made it onto this thing, and he's like, and he literally shows up, and his first line is like, hey, what the fuck's up, man? And it's like, and it's it was great. I love seeing it. It was a very welcome sight, and I wish there was a place for more Zach Wilde, but sadly there wasn't. So let's just get into the some of the CIA
meat of
bits
it.
of it. Now that we've got the fun music stuff out of the way.
Mhm.
So this is kind of a conspiracy theory it is.
Yeah.
It is a conspiracy
is.
theory podcast.
A really well made one.
And one of the things I found most interesting in it is episode 2, when they talk about all the different technology that the CIA has and all the different methods that they use.
Mm-hmm.
It's literally a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
That's not an exaggeration. That woman's literally talking about like the
Rose.
lipstick camera. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was so funny about what Rose said was that they've literally made inventions by watching a James Bond movie. He's like, can we do that?
Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
Like-
Yeah, they talk about the masks and
Yeah.
how like she
Like-
takes the mask off in front of Bush, and he's like, "Oh my fucking god!"
And they're like, can we do that? Can we get someone on that? We're like, yeah, let's do that. Let's do what they're doing in the movie.
Like, it's really interesting to see how they borrow from other industries and how it's not like a bunch of fucking nerdlingers in a room on computers. Like, it's very creative people just seeing how far they can push the limits.
They hired magicians in
Yeah.
the CIA to do like illusions so that people wouldn't be spotted in Russia.
And it's like, that makes total sense. Of course they would hire these people, but I hadn't really thought of that before this, honestly. But like, I really love the idea of Hollywood doing shit first, thinking like, this is something the CIA would totally do. And they're like, we should do that. That's just so fucking funny to me.
Yeah. So that was actually one of my favorite episodes was 2.
Yep.
Because I just like that shit was so cool. And you literally, I felt like that was the most inside story that you got from there, was you were getting real, seriously, never before heard information about some of the tactics the CIA uses.
I don't think it was never heard before. I think it was just new to us. 'Cause
Maybe,
I feel
but
like something like that has to be out there.
But I have never heard about the fact that they actually had those lipstick cameras.
No, that's so sick.
I had
though.
never heard about the face masks. I had
Yeah.
never heard about that girl saying that her first day in like photography school at the CIA
was on a helicopter.
Was on a
using
heli-
Yeah.
giant telephoto lens.
photographing people's license plates.
Yeah.
That I had definitely never heard before.
I've always looked down on conspiracy theories before this, and I still kind of do because a lot of them are bullshit. But so this is like my first experience with like espionage, I guess, and like
Mhm.
actually learning it. So a lot of this stuff is really new to me, and I'm so interested.
Yeah, so the episode 2 is definitely one of my favorite parts. One of my least favorite, actually definitely my least favorite episode is 7. I don't know how you guys felt about episode 7, but that's the one where you can kind of tell that it was only supposed to go 7,
Mhm.
and it was supposed to be the episode that ended up being 8 was supposed to be 7. But he even kind of says in it, he's like, yeah, I showed one of my friends the first few episodes, and he raised this point, so I wanted to address it.
Wait, what happened in 7?
7 is the one where he talks to that journalist.
Okay, yeah.
And and it's the whole episode is it's Rorschach test.
Yeah.
Where he's like, "Oh, am I?
They kind of felt like filler.
Am I falsely spreading CIA propaganda?" I felt like that would have been a good bonus episode.
I think that would have been a good like 10 minutes at the end of the last episode.
There
like,
are
just like
also-
a footnote, really.
There are also seeds of doubt in the episode. Like it almost felt like he was like kind of going back on the theory of like, maybe this isn't
Well, he
true.
did that through the entire
I think-
series.
'cause
really.
Especially in that.
because I think 7 was made after 8,
Mhm.
or at least the interviewing for 8 was already done.
I don't think so. It seems like everything was in order, didn't it?
I think 7 was something he added on later.
No, because I read the descriptions and they said that 7 was in 2019. Because in the descriptions of each episode, it said the date that they recorded it, or like the date that what they were looking at
really
took place. Yeah, and also, the final episode took place in 2020, like just
Mhm.
right before COVID.
Yeah,
So they didn't have much time. He didn't have enough time to go to Russia. That was in 2019 that they did that.
yeah. I guess you're right.
the 8th episode, they were talking about COVID.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I guess you're right, but it definitely felt like that was not originally part of the plan.
I think because he had to wait for Klaus to end his tour before he went on tour in Australia. So I think he just had time and he was like, yeah, I'll do some more like investigative stuff. I'll go back.
I think it was because of his
They're
friend.
touring.
He even talks about his friend, where his friend
Yeah,
was
his friend
like,
Michael.
no,
Oh, no, his friend that he showed the episodes
yeah,
to. Yeah.
and they were like, yeah, no, this like, aren't you spreading their propaganda? If this is what all this is, aren't
Which
you?
I love that concept. Like I actually really enjoyed that concept. Like how he was like, I'm spreading CIA propaganda, and then the reporter was like, no, you're spreading Russian propaganda.
See,
I thought that was cool.
That was the one cool line from that episode.
But-
was when she said, I always felt growing up that Russia would become more like the United States, and
Yeah.
the United States ended up becoming
But
more like
I still
Russia.
like that whole concept. I think it could have been condensed to 10 minutes at the end of the last
Yeah.
episode because,
Yeah.
like you said, that's like you want to present everything and then you want to question yourself. You don't want to present a bunch of stuff, question yourself and your entire journey, and then be like, "Hey, here's the interview." Like that should be a footnote.
But I thought the way that I can't remember exactly what the last line or the last couple lines of episode 8 was, but I did think that was the perfect way to end it. Like that was totally like, yeah, that was a pro ending.
yeah,
was
that's true. The ending was really satisfactory.
Um,
But I did like that they included that.
so my favorite episode in the series was episode 4.
Is that the one with the?
That's the one.
It's the CIA's with the band, right?
That's the one where it's one where CIA is like sending Louis Armstrong on goodwill missions
Mhm.
in the Congo, and like I liked the perspective that Louis Armstrong had. Is like the CIA is telling him to go play jazz in the Congo so that they don't become communists, and he's saying, "Well, I don't really feel like I should be serving a country that doesn't allow my people to eat with other people." You know.
Yeah, well, he did a whole musical about it too, which I
Yeah.
thought was really cool.
And I just thought that was a really cool perspective to have.
I really liked the episode like meeting Doc.
Yeah,
Because,
that was a good one.
I almost didn't think that they were going to interview Doc because like
Yeah,
they built
same.
up to it so much, and I'm like, this dude's fucking insane. This dude's like elusive as shit. He
Yeah.
worked with like the fucking cartel, and he was working with like the CIA most likely, and just like, and then they actually sit down with this dude, and I really liked how he noted like how Doc really got to him and really tricked him because like
He was
by-
very personable.
by the end of his conversation with Doc, he was like, yeah, like I was honestly questioning myself a little bit, and then his friend Michael, I think his name was like, no, you're just falling for his shit. Like, he's a very like convincing dude, a very like personable human. You're just falling for his shit. You can't let that get to you, which I really liked. How he really felt, the reporter Patrick really felt like a human in all of this. He didn't feel like a narrator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there was a lot of like, after listening to it, you do kind of get like, and he even mentions this too, I think, where you do get, just even as a listener, you get kind of distrustful of people.
Yeah.
Because you're like, oh man, like I'm so used to like all these like CIA guys who are just like disarmingly charming.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out that they're completely dishonest and withholding stuff from you.
Yeah.
My favorite part of this whole thing, honestly, like the part that where I was like, oh my God, like I had to pause it and I was like, wow, that was fucking epic, is when they read that letter.
Yeah.
From the CIA.
That dude was so sick.
That letter, it was worded almost like it came out of a novel.
It seems
It felt
like
so dramatic.
It seems like something that you would see in a Harry Potter book, where they like find like some mystical, like elusive character, and that's the letter he sends them. That CIA dude was, I can't remember his name, but that was such a cool letter, and it was a complete detour from the story. I that was my favorite part.
I love how he says like, I'm about to go have a martini with my wife in my private residence with my 2 kids. I've left this life behind me now and will not ever step back into it again. But I will answer this one question for you, just to settle your curiosity. It's like, wow, this is such a cool letter.
And the line where he's like, I've seen the elephant.
Yeah.
Man.
And like I love that allegory too. So I'm like, when he heard that, I was like, oh, this dude's he's out there.
And he calls the CIA a bunch of pencil pushers nowadays.
Yeah.
I loved it.
He seemed like such like a oh, the good old days kind of boomer. I was like, I appreciate
he's the kind of guy who I would, if I could meet one person who has even appeared in this show, it would definitely be him.
Yeah.
I think I'd meet Klaus.
Really?
Yeah, he seemed like such a badass.
I would meet Doc McGee.
He scares me.
I want someone in Hollywood to do a movie about that man's life, because he has gone through some crazy stuff.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So I guess now should be the time where we kind of get into it. After hearing all 8 episodes, what conclusions would you draw from it? Because the episode, again, for the people who ignored our advice at the beginning, they don't conclusively find the answer.
They leave it to your interpretation.
Which I love, by the way. I love that it wasn't super heavy-handed by saying this is what it really is.
I was a little salty, but I was like, yeah, no, this is how it should.
I would have been mad if he ended up being like, yeah, it's true. Like,
no, I was
Trump
so
called
waiting
me and
for
said
the
it
answer.
happened.
I was so waiting for the answer.
I'm really happy that.
But like midway through, I knew. I was like, there's no way that there's actually going to be an answer, because it would have been a massive story.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be hearing about it first from the show. But so that they don't actually uncover yes or no, but there are definitely points.
They do uncover a lot of stuff.
There are definitely things that are uncovered, and there are definitely things that point to the CIA might have had a hand in it.
I think so.
To me, I think it's kind of unquestionable that the CIA at least helped spread it.
Yes.
I think that's unquestionable, because they did spread that book too. I can't remember the name of it, but that
no,
was
they cited that right at the end.
Yeah,
they talked about that
that
a
was
lot.
confirmed.
But my opinion is the CIA definitely gave Doc McGee a deal and sent him to do this, because
I would agree with that too.
Because if otherwise, this makes no fucking sense. The dude was in a cartel. He downplayed his role, but he was a major connection in the cartel.
Yeah, that's a key point in this, is all the people, whether they're CIA or just people who are, I don't know how to explain it, but people who end up being connected in these sorts of worlds. They are people who are very good at making it seem like they're telling you the truth when they're not.
And the dude that was a part of this cartel, I don't remember his name, but he said himself that even the truck drivers got like 3 to 5 years in prison. And you're telling me
Doc got off easy.
Yeah. So that was a CIA deal without a doubt. And I think that they had him set up this thing. I don't think that they had anything to do with the Wind of Change. I think that that was the work of Klaus because, I don't know, I believe him. I don't think that they really did anything, but I do think that they distributed it. I think that they were handed Wind of Change on a silver platter and ran with it.
I'd also like to say, I guess, kind of pointing to the favorability of Doc McGee being a CIA agent.
Well, not a CIA agent, but someone
working with an informant for the CIA, like working for them. It's his lavish spending. They were definitely funding his spending.
No,
that was the
before.
drug money.
That was before.
Oh, I thought that was both drug money and government money.
No, kind of the.
Also, stop playing with that. It's going to catch up on the mic.
Right. Sorry.
No, I definitely inferred from that like the CIA thing happened after he got caught up.
100%. They talked about that was when he was managing the dude that they were interviewing when he was small time, way before he got involved with the CIA. So, no.
But I think some of the things. So I was not prepared for how convincing and genuine Klaus seemed.
Same.
Even compared to the other people. Because the way that it was explained, it's a podcast, you can't see his body language. But from the way that you can hear him speak and the way that his body language was described, it seemed like it was truly the first time he had ever heard of this theory.
Yeah.
It seemed like, because it wasn't that he was saying no, it didn't. Because Doc McGee, when they get to him on this topic, his disposition starts to change.
The dude narrates it himself that he fucking tenses up and like you can see him squirm.
Yeah, and you can kind of hear it. You can kind of hear it in his voice. But Klaus had none of that. I am very much inclined to believe him, and I didn't expect that going into that last episode.
And something that we actually talked about before me and Dan even saw this, and me and you talked about this, I don't know if Dan was here, but you mentioned that it might be a little difficult to gauge whether he's lying or not because of his accent and because of his foreign mannerisms, which I do recognize, but at the same time, I think he was genuine. I don't entirely believe this, but I think at most, maybe the CIA told him you should write a song about this. I don't understand why. This is what annoyed me a little bit. Patrick kept pushing the narrative that the CIA themselves wrote the song, that the CIA themselves got down in a room and wrote this song themselves, where it's much easier to just like assume they could have just asked Klaus to write a song about this, and which that's also, I think makes so much more sense.
And that's also their pattern. Yeah. Like when they talk about it in episode 2 and 3 and 4, they never say, "Oh yeah, we trained our own magicians. We trained our own magician." No, they find guys who know what they're doing already, and they hire them in secret.
So I was pretty annoyed when they kept bringing that up, but I could excuse that because it was really well crafted. But I think at most they asked Klaus to write a song that could enact this change. I don't entirely believe that, though, but I think that's where the limit is.
That's exactly what my theory is, too. Honestly, like halfway through the podcast, I was like, yeah, I don't think the CIA wrote it, but they definitely pushed it. And like, yeah, I could totally believe them going over to Klaus and being like, hey, write this. We need it for help with the Cold War.
Yeah, I think that's very plausible, but I don't think it happened. But it could have. I'm very on the fence about it.
There are also two things that I thought were three things that came up in the show that were like, that kind of throw a monkey wrench in that plan for me. One is the guy who didn't work, but was the G.I. Joe toy.
That was so fucking weird.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
He seemed to get all, like we talked about tensing up. He seemed totally like deer in headlights when they brought up like, have you been told this story that the Scorpions were working with the CIA? And he seemed totally like, oh my God, I really did not expect.
Yeah. For the
mad.
people that haven't seen it, like this is really weird. It's this dude who makes custom G.I. Joe toys, and he made one of the Scorpions. And in the description, he talked about them working with the CIA to end the Cold War.
And he explains it by saying not many people know this.
Yes. But then when Patrick asked him about this, he's like, "Oh, I loved the Scorpions as a kid. I loved the CIA, and I thought what they did was really cool. So I came up with this backstory." Fucking bullshit.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, oh my god, that is such a fucking coincidence. You have to be like a writer for a TV show to make that shit work. Also, those are gunshots. I know those are fireworks. But no, I think that's total bullshit. He had to have known something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's too weird. It's way too weird for him not to have known.
Are those gunshots or are those fireworks?
Those are fireworks.
Okay.
Another thing that I thought was very strange is the girl who they talk to. I think it's episode 5 or 6, and she talks about how there was, and she of course was like, "Oh, I have no idea because I don't know much about that world,
Mm-hmm.
and it meant nothing to me when I heard it, probably."
Yes.
But when she said that there was some sort of rock star at a CIA dinner party, and they were like, what are you doing here? And he was like, "Oh yeah, I am in a band, but I also work undercover for the CIA.
Yeah.
To help forward their agendas." That, I mean, of course, that might not have been Klaus.
I don't think it
very
was.
clearly could not have been Klaus. But it does kind of open your mind to like,
It very much sets a precedent.
yeah, to like, I wonder, maybe we're on the wrong song here.
Yeah. Well, because they like they had that I don't remember the name, but it was like Dirty Something Band.
Mm-hmm.
Like they could have, and like how they were trying to, like very actively, the CIA was trying to get their music into Russia. It could have been one of them. I don't think it was Klaus because, like I said, I'm very inclined to believe him, and I'm a little disappointed in myself, honestly, that I believe him so easily. But
Because he just seemed like,
Genuine.
yeah.
yeah,
He was just like, wait, really?
it's really hard for me to not believe him because he seems like such a cool dude.
He was like, how did you come with this? I've never heard this before in my life. Like,
Yeah.
But like the way you're saying it sounds suspicious, but like
yeah, I can't make
he
it
was
not sound
so
suspicious.
absurdly genuine sounding.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And they also go, I think it's episode 2, where they say like, yeah, this is very possible that the CIA did this, and the reason I'm allowed to say that is because that means they've probably moved on to something bigger.
Yeah.
And isn't there a girl who says that where she's like, they still might be doing this
Yeah,
today?
that's exactly what I talked
Mhm.
about before.
There are a lot of this podcast at the very least opens your mind to like, I wonder if there are a lot of other songs and bands that have been commissioned by the CIA
Yeah.
over at the
Or
latter half of
if
the
not
20th
commission
century.
boosted.
Right.
And not just bands, all forms of entertainment,
Mhm.
movies, toys, like
Mhm.
just the CIA might be more involved in the way we analyze culture than what we
And
might
also,
be.
this doesn't really have to do with any foreign intelligence. At least I hope not. But like when I heard that, I started to think about K-pop. Like, not to sound like ridiculous, but this music from a totally different culture has influenced ours and is opening people's eyes to a new culture and a new way of being, just through music. And it's really affecting people and changing their lives and affecting their outlooks. And like, when I thought of that, I was like, this is not a far-fetched idea at all. This is a legitimate form of altering minds.
Yeah,
and
you know what's
intelligence.
amazing is even before I heard Wind of Change, I heard that theory floated about K-pop.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before,
Because
ever.
That's also apparently how the reason why we have Thai restaurants in America is because Thailand was like, hey, let's send chefs abroad to try
Mhm.
to popularize our food.
And
Yeah.
it worked.
I mean-
I've actually never had Thai food, I don't think.
Pretty good.
Yeah, it's nice. But like, that sort of, I'm not saying it as a theory, but like, that opened my eyes to like, this is a legitimate form of coercion. Because before I was like, oh, you're fucking investing in music? Like, when you could be like putting boots on the ground and looking for like real dirt on the government. But this is just turning the citizens against the government through
Mhm.
really strange means. And I really like they said in the podcast, it makes you really distrustful now because it's like it opens your eyes to so many different things. It's insane.
Mm-hmm. And then the last piece where I was like, oh, that's interesting, is Fuck, I don't remember what I was gonna say. I don't remember what the last one was, and that I think was my favorite one too. And I don't remember what it was.
Give you the light.
wow.
No, I don't even have it written down. I don't think. But yeah, no. So the there's just so many things that are you don't want to believe that it happened, but there are a lot of things that are just this one thing is weird, and then this one thing is weird. And
Why would this happen? Why would that happen? There's no reason for this to happen.
But also, Patrick doesn't like treat you like an idiot. He doesn't patronize you really. He gives you the information. He himself is confused about it, and it's kind of comforting in a way that like it's comforting and both scary that like this dude who's been doing this for years is confused as well. Whereas, like I said, with other conspiracy theory videos and stuff, it's so heavy-handed and it's so like, this is real. I'm gonna tell you about the Chuck E. Cheese pizza and how they recycle the slices. This is just like such a genuine like information dump that I really enjoyed it.
I remember what it was now. The one that seemed so strange to me and still does, and I still don't really understand it, to be honest with you, is when they say that, and this is not even something that they dug up. This is something that resurfaced because of this show. It's a story that Klaus told himself about a CIA agent calling him to a hotel and having him whistle the opening like whistling melody in Wind of Change for them.
Dude, every time they mention that, I got chills. Even when you just mentioned it, I got chills.
It's so weird.
Like,
why would that happen?
I don't really understand it. Like, that's because I can say, like, okay, maybe the G.I. Joe guy has another friend who's also in the CIA, who obviously this story is, whether it's true or not, is kind of around certain guys in the CIA. They tell it. They could have told him. That makes sense, even if what he's saying is not true.
yeah.
This does not really seem like that, though. This is something where it's like
so strange.
I can't figure out how it fits into the puzzle at all.
But I think the thing that I think is interesting is when Doc told it, he said that the woman just walked up and asked. When Klaus told it, he said that Doc was the one who got him to come down and see the woman.
Oh, really? I forgot
Yes.
about that.
Wow.
I missed that, I guess.
He said that Doc called him down. And that's what really got me to think Doc is 100% in on this, without a doubt.
Right.
Because the way like Klaus tells it is so absurdly different than the way Doc tells it, and I believe Klaus more. And it also confirms the thoughts that I already had about Doc.
Do you think that Doc maybe was like, because Klaus wouldn't have been suspicious of Doc, I don't think. Do you think that maybe he was like, I wonder if it's almost like the, I'm trying to think of what movie this reminds me of, but it's almost like in a movie where Klaus kind of doesn't remember it because it didn't really, it for whatever reason, this particular piece of it didn't stick. But what if on that boat that they're talking about, on the Moskva, where Klaus says he was inspired to write the song, what if there was a little nudging from Doc?
That 100% could have happened.
Where he was like, man, isn't this such a magical moment? Like, this would be, like, he was really trying to egg him and being like, man, this is like the shit that they write songs about.
Yeah,
you know,
or just,
you know what I mean?
With not even that forward, like, even just having a conversation with someone about such a powerful moment, and they're a musician, no shit, they're gonna write a song about it. And yeah, I 100% agree with you. It could have been so easy for the CIA to be like, hey, Doc, we're gonna set up this concert. I want you to nudge Klaus. He looks like he's, because they already knew that they had done like Leningrad before and shit like that.
And they knew that was the band that understood the moment, especially being from Germany.
100%. And like, and how much they themselves were affected by seeing their music spread to the eastern side and how it changed people's minds. They could have totally targeted Klaus with some like behind the scenes coercion by having Doc be like, you should write a song about this. And like you said, he could have just forgotten about it because it was so insignificant to him.
Or it could have even been just the deal was to play the concert, and maybe even there was like another back end to this deal where he was supposed to do something else, and him, because obviously we kind of know that we have an idea of the phylum that Doc McGee fits under.
Yeah.
He's the kind of guy who will be like, oh, I see an opportunity where I can do this and negotiate out of the second half of this
and get
deal.
even more.
And he can say, okay, I'm going to try to maybe encourage this song. Now this song is written. Therefore, look what I've done for you. I don't have to do whatever the second half of this deal was.
And also, I'm pretty sure this was like, I'm paraphrasing, but this was something that they mentioned in the podcast. Like, the best sort of intelligence agents and spies will lead you to a conclusion while you think that you got there yourself. Well, it was entirely what they laid the breadcrumbs out for you. He could have easily laid some breadcrumbs, gotten Klaus to do that. That is the total MO of the CIA.
And then would have been like, Klaus, this is a beautiful song that you've written. What made you think about this?
Well, that was just on the Moscow. Like, yeah, that I thought of that a little bit, but I didn't go too into it. But I'm glad you brought that up because that is a total possibility.
Yeah, I had not really. I guess I had forgotten about the fact that Doc said, or maybe I didn't like hear the. I didn't pick up on the fact that the two stories were different.
When Klaus said it, he was really like sort of confused with his wording. So it was a little hard to listen to. I actually went back and listened to it
because
a second time.
He kind of seemed like he was like, huh, that is weird now that you mention it.
Yeah, because he, like he said, he had never thought about the CIA angle. So, so like the CIA woman incident was kind of very minor in his mind.
Yeah.
So it took him a bit to recall it. And I'm happy he did because we got that bit about Doc, which I really, really thought was like, I was already leaning towards Doc, but that was just like oh my God, it's him.
Also, that Doc some of the people that they were on the tour with Doc would say he would just disappear for a couple of days and come back.
I don't think
that was
him.
the other dude. That was
the trench coat dude.
Yeah, that was Brent with like the.
That was the
band.
guy who wrote the letter.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And also really interesting. He technically did not work with the CIA at the time, but then he later went on to work with the CIA, which was very suspicious that they would just happen to get this translator who acted like a typical spy to join the CIA.
I did find it funny though when I think it was the band who said it, where they were like, "If that guy was a spy, he was the worst fucking spy."
Dude, I was driving when I heard that, and I was fucking laughing.
This guy
so
came
hard.
out with a long leather black trench coat.
Right. Yeah, right. He might as well have had the fucking like glasses for.
Yeah, he had the spyfall hat on.
It's my complete Terminator. I mean, no, not Terminator. Matrix garb out.
Yeah, he yeah. One of the things though is yeah, I never really put together that. Yeah, that's interesting.
Didn't put what together?
I never put together that that Doc McGee was like could have like subtly hinted towards it until you brought it all in front of me like that. This is why I'm glad we're doing this because
we're learning more through discussion.
Yeah, I've come to a new conclusion.
Because like that was something that I'd very vaguely thought of, but it's definitely cemented in my head now. It's definitely more of a possibility.
It would make sense why they need someone like Doc McGee, someone who's very charismatic to do something like that.
I don't think I'm still not 100% certain that's what happened. Not even like 20% certain that's what happened, but I'm just presenting possibilities, which is what I really enjoy about all this. You don't even have to be totally certain about it. It's just the possibilities of what could be true is what's really interesting.
Yeah.
Also, I was fully expecting Doc McGee to be one of those guys who just kind of disappeared and is like at large. And they're like, no, he's just in Florida.
Yeah, I'm so surprised.
He's got Trump signs on his lawn.
That was his neighbor.
Oh, I thought that was him.
No, that was his neighbor. But I was so surprised they were able to contact him so easily.
Because they're total pros at this, man. They were like, they never mentioned what it was really about, and they always saved the real questions for the very end.
Like how they talked about the art of surfacing, like finally getting to your real purpose of being
always
there.
Warmed up for so long with these guys.
They were really good at it. I'd like to see how long their interviews were in general, because I'm so curious to see how much buttering up it took.
They said the Klaus one was meant to go an hour.
Yeah, and it went far over.
So I would assume they probably got an hour with Doc.
Yeah. But even then, a lot of the Klaus, it seemed like they talked a lot after he surfaced too, because
Oh,
Klaus
yeah.
Klaus was really interested in the whole CIA angle.
The thing is that you could tell that Doc he wasn't nervous, but he was definitely.
He did not want to talk about it.
Yeah, he was definitely anticipating himself, possibly slipping, and he didn't want to go any further.
Yeah.
Or like Klaus, there's nothing to slip about. He was just curious.
Yeah, and I thought it was so fucking funny how right after the interview, they're like they wanted to see if Klaus was calling anyone because they were suspicious. So they look out they look out the window, and they're just like they're looking out the window at the dude's parked car, and he doesn't go out for 30 fucking minutes, and they're like, holy shit. He's doing something, and they go down to the lobby. The dude's at the bar having a drink with one of his buddies. It's like that really ingratiated me with him too.
Yeah, I really liked that.
Yeah, it also one of the things that really like hit me too is when they interviewed that girl when she was like showing them all the old Russian rock venues,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that are like turned into opera houses now.
Yeah.
And when Patrick asks her about the Scorpions and the CIA, she says, "Oh, I hope not. They seemed like really genuine guys."
Yeah.
That was one where it was like, I really hope they didn't do it now.
Same thing with the woman in episode 7, the Russian reporter. When he surfaced with her and he revealed, "Hey, this is the purpose of what I'm doing." She was mad.
She was really
It's
mad.
like she was like, "You're the fucking idiot," and she said, "Thanks for ruining one of my favorite bands," because she had
It
never
seemed so
thought of this
genuine
before.
to her before.
Yeah, and she had never thought of this idea that, oh my God, they could be CIA plants. And like obviously she didn't get to hear the interview with Klaus yet. So she was just like presented with all this speculatory information and just crushed. I felt bad for
And
her.
all like a repeated theme in that show, which again I obviously had no clue about because I don't live in Europe, is like how much that song resonated with so many people. And
how we had like not even heard of it.
one of my favorite parts is when they do this, which I thought was an extra step that they didn't have to do, but I'm glad they did.
Yeah, when they went to the concert.
Is when they go to the concert and he's
Yeah.
like, "Oh yeah, hear that guy singing Wind of Change?
Yeah.
That's me." Like that was like, yeah, like this is. It would have been really weird if the CIA wrote that song.
Yeah, I'm really happy that it wasn't super definitive because I would have been kind of sad if the CIA did write it. Like I definitely think they had a hand in it, but I don't want them to have written it.
I also would have, for me, I honestly would have been more sad if it was like definitive that they did not write it. I would have been like, oh, so this is all Ben for Vane. Like we just went on for this conclusion and it didn't even turn out to be true.
No, because even if it turned out that they didn't write it, there are so many different things that they could have done. Because I don't think they wrote it at all. It's like a very low possibility in my head. But there's still so many other things that they did that are more clandestine.
Well, I guess by writing it, I meant like that Klaus knew that there was CIA influence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it was determined that there was no CIA influence in the song whatsoever, you're right. That maybe that would have been like, that was kind of a disappointing.
I don't think he would have put out the podcast at that point. I think he would have just given up.
Yeah.
It's like that's
Maybe.
such an awful ending.
Yeah, there was one. I know you said you don't normally listen to podcasts like this, but there was one a few years ago that came out. It was by the Serial guys called Shit Town. And that one was like, oh my, because I was so invested in like the mystery that they presented at the beginning of it in the first couple episodes, and I'm not gonna lie, I got 3 hours of sleep because I was still in high school. I got 3 hours of sleep before school that night because I was just like, I just want to like finish this and get it done, and then you give absolutely no resolution, and it was like, wow, that like. Because the podcast ended up being about something completely different. But for that initial mystery, which is always just kind of like in the back of your mind, you never get any...
Not even like any like good speculation.
No.
That's lame.
The mystery was kind of like...
Thrown to the wayside.
Because the mystery was about like where... I'm not going to get into it, but it was like this dude like died and left his inheritance so that the government couldn't get it, so he like hid it somewhere, and the mystery was like, oh my god, like, and he left it so only one guy could find it, and the mystery was like trying to uncover where it was, and there was never any resolution about the mystery except that the guy who was meant to get it got it.
That's kind of
So that one I was kind of like,
Yeah.
yeah. But this was totally different. This was like very open. I like the way that this ended.
yeah.
And do you think Patrick ever considered the possibility that we just thought
Of what?
of Doc McGee like prodding Klaus subconsciously? Because I
See,
feel like that's
that's
something
the
you
thing.
include.
Like, well, and also he
I don't think it was subconsciously.
No, I mean like it was subconscious to Klaus.
Yes.
Oh,
Klaus.
yeah.
That's the thing. There's a lot of angles that he could have tackled that he didn't. Like how whenever he was referring to them writing the song, he referred to it almost exclusively as the CIA like nerds writing and then giving it to Klaus. I think he was thinking a little too inside the box in that regard. He might have thought that, but I don't think there was a lot to cover, and adding some more angles would have taken up more time.
Yeah.
I mean, that could have been the seventh episode, but
They did have some space there.
yeah. But I still think they did a lot of good stuff in episode 7. But I don't know. He probably considered it because his friend Michael, without a doubt, considered it. But I don't know. It's kind of up in the air.
Yeah, to me, Michael seemed like he was like, because they talk about that a little in the last episode, where Michael is like, yeah, no, see, like he almost went too far with it.
Yeah, I'm really happy it wasn't hosted by Michael.
Where because he was very like, oh, like Klaus, you do realize that Doc McGee would have informed Klaus, and that's why Klaus seems genuine because he's been rehearsing for this.
Yeah.
That to me felt like a step too far.
I also did like how he mentioned that though, because it's very possible that Doc McGee, since there was so much time between his meeting with Doc and his meeting with Klaus, he could have called Klaus and warned him. But I don't believe it.
And when you get that far, when you delve into like that far of a conspiracy, it's like, well, then what? Everything could have been fake, you know?
And when you're thinking that deep, like you can explain away nearly anything. Like you could be presented with enough counter evidence, but you could still explain it away by just saying people are lying and people were tipped off.
Exactly.
So like if you doubt too much, and if you don't give people the benefit of the doubt at least slightly, you'll just be cynical and you won't be able to come to any satisfactory conclusion.
You've got to draw a line.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he seemed really into like the whole mystique of the CIA. Because Michael, in episode 1, they talk about how kind of interloped with that world he is.
Yeah, because he was friends with Oliver, who gave them the story.
Yeah. And that was something I thought was really interesting. I did not know. I had no clue about that system that they explain of like what makes you allowed to put CIA on your resume.
Yeah, that was a really good aside, honestly.
That whole backwater world that's where Michael met all those dudes of like the people who like with a wink and a nod are like, I know you were CIA, you know I was CIA, I'll hire you here, no questions asked.
Yeah, because there's no other way they can put that on their resume.
Right.
They just have a giant gap in their work like sentence, I guess.
Like a lot of them, I forget what role they play, but a common job for ex-CIA officials is working at banks.
Yeah, like finances and brokers and stuff.
Yeah, and it's like it's really interesting how they're like, "Oh, do you have any experience in this?" No, I was just part of the CIA. It's like, yeah, I got you. Like the wink.
I think it was a little more subtle than that.
But
I'd really like to do almost like a little bit of research on how they would convey that, because that seems really interesting. Because like when you're trying to convey, hey, I'm in the CIA, but only other CIA people can pick up on it, that's like really important for you to get right.
Well,
Because
because
otherwise you're just like tipping people off.
Well, because they said that's what like there's a specific person or people whose role is to like
to connect,
to connect those two people and be like, I know where the bodies are buried. I know where there's a position where someone will
that's
hire
such a cool
the gatekeeper.
like underground system, honestly.
you. Yeah, totally.
It's like shit like that is just like, it's like movie shit, but it's like, oh my god, that's really happening.
If there's one thing that I took away from this podcast, definitely be the CIA is awesome. Like,
Well, no, they're pencil
So-
pushers now.
Yeah,
oh, they were cool.
Yeah.
All right.
They were
They could still be.
nothing like back in Florida Man's day.
You know, maybe they're drawing some cool things with their pencils. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. So I guess that was our Wind of Change retrospective.
Yeah, thank you for having us listen to this, Max, because I would not have found this otherwise, but I'm really happy I did.
I definitely think if you have your own theory, listeners, definitely leave it in the comments. We'd love to read it.
Yeah, totally. Before we wrap up, though, let's go around and give me your MVP of that 8-episode series. The person who, to you, was just like, man, whenever that guy was on the metaphorical screen, he was great. For me, it was definitely the CIA guy who was allegedly the worst CIA agent ever.
Yeah.
The one who wrote the
letter.
romanticized letter.
For him, absolutely. For me, I would have listened to 8 episodes just about him if he would have done it.
For me, I already said this earlier, but for me, it's Doc, 100%. Like, what a fucking character. Like, what a Narcos-looking ass dude. Just ridiculous human. Just such a caricature.
Yeah, I didn't end up looking up a picture of him. I probably should have done
Me
that.
neither. I didn't look at pictures of anyone.
Apparently,
Yeah.
he had like bleached white teeth and like
Yeah, they said he was really
frizzy hair.
really done up.
Floridian.
Yeah.
So my favorite MVP was Doc McGee, but since Jonah picked him, I'm gonna say my second favorite was definitely Rose. I think that the stuff that she had to say,
Rose was the one who was played by the actress, right?
Yeah.
yeah, that's not even her real name. Her real name wasn't even Rose. All the
What was it?
who knows?
I always thought that would be a cool trick.
Yeah.
But yeah, the insider stuff that she told us about and like how she even met her husband by doing this stuff was just really interesting to me. And I think there could totally be like a romance action movie made about her life.
Was that Rose?
Wait, no,
who
yeah,
met her
Rose-
husband? No, you're thinking of my second MVP is who you're saying met her husband. That's the woman who was
The
they did give
photographer.
her name.
The photographer.
Who did the mask thing with George Bush, which I think was fucking sick.
Yeah. Rose,
She was my second MVP.
Rose, the one who's played by the actress, is the girl who wore the mask, right?
No.
No, she's the one who heard the story about a rocker at the dinner.
Yes, that's Rose.
Yeah.
Okay.
The woman who wore the mask is the photographer who
Mhm.
did
So
meet her
your
husband.
MVP is the
The mask
The
woman.
mask.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
got their
she
names
was sick.
confused.
Rose was cool too because she gave some intense insight. But
Yeah.
I like the actress who played Rose.
yeah, it was funny. It was like To Catch a Predator level shit.
Yeah, she sounded a little too
What was
young.
I like how she'd say like off the record, on the record.
Hmm.
Like it's like you couldn't put this in the podcast, and I thought that was pretty neat.
Hmm. Yeah. So with that, thank you for listening. Maybe we'll do more things like this in the future. I don't know though.
I'm down to learn. I'm down.
Yeah, maybe we'll even do it with like a movie or something. Do
That'd
some
be
sort of
cool.
like movie.
We could do The Lighthouse.
We could do The Lighthouse.
Dan, have you seen The Lighthouse?
Not yet.
We could do The Lighthouse.
Have you seen it yet?
No,
Okay.
I have it downloaded. I'm pretty sure.
It's pretty good. I would definitely not be opposed to
We should
doing that
watch
for
it
a little
together.
bit because
No, I'm not watching movies with people. That's a movie you got to watch on your own. I feel like.
All right, fair enough.
yeah, that's one you could actually probably get a decent segment onto because yeah. So who knows? Maybe we'll do it in the future. So with that is us signing off. That was episode 7. See you in episode 8, hopefully later.
Farewell.
Stay safe.